Welcome to the Tales of Drunken Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Mountain, and in this podcast, I will be regaling you with various tales of drunken stupors, bad decisions, and nights long lost only to be retold by friends the very next day. Fasten your seatbelts because today's story is about how a simple birthday celebration turned into two guys hiking the streets of Nashville to get home. Nashville is pretty much a center for bachelorette parties. In fact, every time I go to downtown Nashville, I end up counting how many bachelorette parties I see throughout the night. My current record is 23, just FYI. Now, how does this connect to the story? Well, we'll get to that in a moment. The night started out by joining a good friend of mine at another friend's party in their apartment. His birthday was literally the next day, and while this was not the purpose of the party, we definitely used it as an excuse to celebrate. So we arrive at our friend's apartment, and already we reach our first obstacle of the night. We couldn't get in. We texted him, called him, but no answer. We just stood around outside the door to the complex for about 10 minutes until he finally came down and let us in. Then we had to climb the most amount of stairs I think I've ever seen in an apartment complex. Finally getting into his apartment, we discover a few more of our friends are there. Now, his apartment wasn't that big, so this wasn't some big party. This was a casual, just good friends type of party. So to keep things simple and easier for all of you to know what's going on, I'm going to assign fake names to all the major players for the night. The guy's apartment we were at was Doug, and along with him was his girlfriend Eve. Another friend of ours was Jordan and his girlfriend Tammy. Doug's roommate at the time was a guy named Mike. Then there was me and my boy Ron. Upon entering Doug's apartment, we found them all gathered in the living room with strobe lights blasting, music bumping. Eve rushes over, hugs us, and offers us some drinks, so we mix ourselves a cocktail and head into the living room. Mike was a huge vape guy, and it obviously wasn't a secret because the living room had a literal haze lingering about it from how much smoke he was blowing. Doug was lounging on the couch with Eve cradled in his lap. Jordan and Tammy were just like giggling in the corner with each other. And a few other people came and went, but I can't remember them, so they're not that important. Honestly, the most exciting part of that party was Mike playing Call of Duty in the living room. Other than that, there wasn't much going on other than chatter about the apartment. There were talks about maybe hitting up another bigger party or just going out, but Ron and I didn't really think much of it. At one point, I was in the kitchen talking to Jordan and Tammy while Mike made pizza rolls in the oven, and when suddenly Ron came up to me, he pulled me aside, and he told me that the girls wanted to go to the club. He wasn't really keen on going, but they were practically like begging him, saying it would be a chance to celebrate his birthday with him, maybe even buy him drinks. Basically, he was just working his way up into asking me if I'd go with him because the people who were going were Doug, Eve, Jordan, and Tammy. Now, if you're keeping track, those people are all in relationships, meaning my boy Ron would have been fifth wheeling. So he wanted me to tag along knowing they'd eventually ditch him, and he didn't want to be pretty much left alone for the night. We call up an Uber right over to the club, and the club we went to was Play. It's pretty popular in Nashville. We arrived around 11:30, and the line was so far down the street, it was even intermingled with the line for the club next door. So we spent quite a bit of time waiting in line. And for those not familiar with Play, it's a club that's divided into two sides. One side is a drag show with a stage, bar, tables, VIP area. And on the other side is a straight nightclub with dancing, DJs, and bars littered throughout. It's a pretty cool place, and it definitely hosts some interesting people. Now, I don't know if something was going on that weekend, but that night was the most packed I've ever seen that place. And there were all kinds of people there. There were college kids, middle-aged people, gay, straight, you name it. It certainly wasn't short on diversity. And after like almost an hour of waiting, we finally get into the club and go straight to the dancing area. And it was popping. Let me tell you, people were dancing all over the place. The bar was lined up. Bartenders were running rampant. It was absolutely insane. So we all head to the dance floor. We managed to find some space for us to dance. Of course, Eve is grinding up on Doug. Tammy's grinding on Jordan. So Ron and I were kind of doing our own thing, but staying near the group. About 20 minutes into dancing, another girl shows up. I had no idea who this girl was, but she walked up to Tammy. They started chatting and talking, so I assumed it was a friend of hers. I keep dancing with Ron, not really paying any attention to her. She joins in on the dancing with the group, and everyone's having a good time. It's great. Now, This girl was on the chubby side, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I particularly didn't find her attractive. And the reason I bring this up is because as we continued dancing, she started to inch her way closer and closer to me. And I'm sitting there like, oh, what the fuck is going on? Then she turns around and tries to like back up into me to start grinding on me. On the outside, I'm still dancing and keeping my cool, but on the inside, I'm like, hell no, 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 no. And I start to like sidestep. I sidestep to avoid her backing up into me. And she just kept backing up into absolutely nothing, like thin air, until she realized I had like shimmied away and made my way on the other side of the group. But she wasn't done. Oh no, she was not going to be deterred. She was on a mission for some dick, and nothing was stopping her, because immediately after striking out with me, she turns to Ron and tries the exact same fucking thing. However, my buddy is a nicer guy than me, and he actually dances with her for a bit, but I can tell by the look on his face that he wasn't about it. It ain't it, Chief. I then noticed Doug, Eve, Jordan, and Tammy were all off in their own world. They didn't care about us anymore, so I took my own initiative and squeezed deeper into the pit of the dance floor. And at this point, it's a tight fit. I mean, you couldn't move without bumping into someone. As I make my way through the crowd, I run into this random girl dressed in all white. She was grooving to the music, and she also had these like glasses on that gave her kind of like a sexy librarian look. Anyway, I must have been at the right spot at the right time, because she just immediately starts to dance with me. I even noticed Ron finally escaped the other girl and made his way towards me and started dancing with a girl of his own. Everything was good until the girl I was dancing with like grabbed my arm while grinding on me and started using me as like a stripper pole. I mean, this girl started twisting herself around me, spinning, dropping to the ground, and all sorts of crazy shit. Now, that may sound hot at first, but when a girl is flinging her entire body around and she's had a few drinks, it becomes less like dancing and more like a balancing act, because she about fell over like 3 or 4 times. Needless to say, it was a major turnoff for me, so when the opportunity arose, I got myself out of that situation. I look over at my buddy Ron, and he's still dancing with his girl and still having a good time, so again, I make my way around the dance floor, and at this point, I'm bobbing and weaving through the crowd like Ezio in Assassin's Creed. Not even just trying to find a place to dance, but just trying to find a place to fucking breathe. As I'm weaving through the crowd, I see these 2 guys making out, and again, there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't swing like that. So I literally just pivot over, just pivot, don't even walk, just pivot over, and literally right next to them are 2 girls making out. And I just remember, like, in that moment, I just stopped for a second completely, and in my head, I just go, nice. And then I continued on my way. So how I might be describing these like next few events might sound ridiculous, but I'm being completely honest. This is how I remember it happening. So as I'm traversing the crowd, I see these group of people in front of me just like split like the Red Sea, leaving this giant gap between them. And in the center of that gap is a young woman sipping her drink. She looks up at me with these these big eyes, and literally it felt like a scene from a fucking movie. But this woman walks up to me sipping her drink, grabs my hand, puts it around her waist, and just starts dancing with me. And she was all up in my business, pushing up against me tightly, grinding slowly, and she even like was caressing my neck with her hand. Like, it literally seemed like she was gonna have sex with me right there on the dance floor. Then out of nowhere, I notice a group of women surround us, yelling and cheering for her to act like more slutty and whatnot. It was at that moment that I realized she had a sash wrapped around her. This was a bachelorette party. Oh, Jesus. I immediately started freaking out, because my initial thought was, I'm dancing with the bride. This woman who's going to get married is all on my dick. Pause. I'm going to take a moment here to say I absolutely hate cheating, like in general. Whether I'm cheated on or someone is trying to use me to cheat on someone, I'm not about it. If you convince yourself to cheat on someone, just end the relationship right there, because that's horrible. It shouldn't be done to anybody, like, honestly. So with that cleared up, let's get back to the story. At that moment, all I can think about is trying to like formulate an escape plan, because I didn't want any part of this woman's possible infidelity. So I'm still trying to kind of play it cool, because like, again, I'm surrounded by like, I think it's like 5 or 6 other women, like just screaming like drunkenly and shit like that. So I'm just kind of like trying to still play it cool, but also like just dipping my head around looking for the opportunity to get out of there. But while I'm looking, luckily I'm able to see that one of the girls around us also has a sash, and that one says bride. Crisis averted. It turns out I was dancing with the maid of honor. Eventually, all the other women leave, and then it's just me and the maid of honor, and she turns around and just immediately starts to make out with me. Like, she shoved her tongue all up in there. It was then, with her tongue sloshing around on my mouth, that I realized how gone this woman was. Not because her technique was sloppy, but because her mouth tasted like straight alcohol. Like, I seriously thought I was going to get drunk from swapping spit with her. After God knows how long at this point of dancing, kissing, dancing, kissing, dancing, kissing, she says she wants to get another drink. Aware of how drunk she was, I tried to motion for us to go find her friends first, and luckily, thank God, she agreed. I was hoping I'd see them right away, but oh, was I wrong. She must have hit the wall as well while we were dancing, because she went from being able to dance and hold her balance pretty well to like almost tipping over at the mere shifting of her weight. So I had to practically carry her around the club. I could tell that her friends weren't in the like club dance area, so I headed over to the other half of the bar. Just dead, completely dead. Obviously, they weren't there. The only place left they could be was a back porch area for people to smoke in. But between us and the area was a sea of people and stairs. Getting that woman up the stairs was like Frodo carrying the ring to Mount Doom. I just wanted that shit to end. I finally get her to the back porch area, and thank God, right in plain sight was her group of bachelorettes. So no longer in the darkness of the club, I could see that most of these women were like in their early 30s, including the bride. The maid of honor, like slung over my shoulder, was definitely the youngest in the group. Anyway, I make my way over to them, and upon seeing me, they all like perk up and address their friend. Ooh, I see you brought your friend with you. At this point, the maid of honor is so far gone, she can barely like form syllables. So I have to explain to them how drunk she is and that I wanted to get her back to them so something bad didn't end up happening to her. Their immediate response was, wait, how old are you? I was 20 at the time and told them I was completely sober, and while it was fun dancing with her and all, it'd probably be best for her to go home. Meanwhile, during this entire conversation, the maid of honor is like fumbling to grab my ass, and I'm like swatting her hand away as I'm trying to talk to her friends. With perfect timing, my buddy Ron approaches, asking if I'm good to leave, to which I wasn't more excited to do so. So I tell the women goodbye and like just head out. Upon leaving the club, Ron looks at calling an Uber, but with the massive amount of people still coming and going, like ridiculously so, even though it's like 1 to 2 a.m., the cost of an Uber was ridiculous. It was stupid for like the 2 miles we needed to go. So we decided to try and like walk out of the area a bit in hopes that the cost of an Uber would go down as we got further away from the club. So we just start walking in the general direction of our dorm, talking along the way. I tell him about my encounter with the maid of honor. He tells me about how the girl he was dancing with like eventually got pulled aside by all her friends. He then went looking for Doug, Eve, Jordan, Tammy, only to discover that they had like already left, even without like telling us or texting us or at least indicating that they had left, even though we all came in an Uber together. After walking for a bit, we look at getting an Uber again, and we apparently had already walked a mile, so halfway there, and only had a mile left to walk. So we just decided to just go ahead and keep walking, partaking in some bro talk along the way, winding our way through the various streets of Nashville until finally arriving back on our campus at our dorms. I immediately passed the fuck out upon crashing onto my bed, only to wake up the next day with sore legs, going about my daily routine like the previous night never happened. Could I have gotten lucky with that maid of honor? Who knows, but honestly, it wouldn't have been worth it. She was probably so blacked out that she doesn't remember me at all to this day. I hope you enjoyed that tale, and remember to tune in for more. I'll be posting an episode every Saturday. If you yourself have a drunken adventure you'd like shared out into the world, send them over to todarequests@gmail.com. That's TODA requests@gmail.com. Show support for the podcast by telling your friends about it and getting as many ears listening as we can. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, keep your drinks cold and the party going.